The millionaire mistook her for a call girl, but she taught him what love really is. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft hum of conversation and the faint clinking of glasses filled the rooftop bar above Manhattan. Warm amber light spilled across polished marble and silver, reflecting off the skyline like melted gold. Every table looked like a photograph from a magazine. Every guest moved with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged. But Mia Collins did not feel like she belonged at all. Her reflection in the glass door said everything: the borrowed black dress with a frayed seam, the scuffed shoes, the tired eyes that had not known a full night's sleep in weeks. Still, she took a deep breath and stepped inside. She had promised her coworker she would cover this late shift. A cold breeze brushed her skin as she entered the private floor. The sign beside the elevator read, "Penthouse Lounge, exclusive access only." Mia tightened her grip on the tray, repeating to herself, "Just one order, then home." The private suite door stood slightly open. Inside, soft jazz played from hidden speakers. A man sat near the window, jacket loosened, his tie undone, a half-empty glass of whiskey beside him. His dark hair caught the golden light, his face unreadable. Without looking up, he said in a low voice, "They sent you fast tonight." Mia froze. "Excuse me?" she asked softly. He looked at her for the first time, his gaze cool and tired, then tilted his head. "How much for the hour?" For a heartbeat, the room went silent except for the hum of the city below. She blinked, unsure if she had heard right. "I am sorry. What did you say?" He leaned back, eyes narrowed. "You do not have to play innocent. My friend said you were discreet." Her breath caught in her throat. Realization hit her like a slap. He thought she was... "Sir, I work here," she said, her voice trembling. "I am a waitress, not." But his half-smile cut her off, careless, cynical. "Right, that is what they all say." Mia's face burned hot. The humiliation stung deeper than she could explain. Without another word, she placed the unopened bottle on the table, turned, and walked out. Her shoes clicked sharply against the marble floor, echoing down the hallway like the heartbeat of her anger. Behind her, Ethan Hale stared after the closing door, the sound of her footsteps fading. He frowned, the fog of whiskey lifting just enough for guilt to seep in. Something in her eyes, shame, fury, and dignity, had struck him like cold water. But pride won. He muttered under his breath, "Another mistake. Just let it go." Outside, rain was falling again. Mia hurried through the streets, clutching her thin coat tighter, the city lights blurring in her tears. The insult replayed in her mind with every step. He thought she was a call girl. She had served countless rude customers, but none had ever made her feel so small. At the subway entrance, she stopped, breathing hard, her reflection in the glass warped by streaks of rain. She whispered to herself, "One more shift. Just survive one more day." And somewhere high above the city, in that glass tower, Ethan Hale sat alone, staring at the unopened bottle she had left behind. For reasons he could not name, the silence felt heavier than before. He told himself it was nothing. He had no idea that the girl he just insulted would soon become the only person who could teach him what love and humility really meant. The next morning, sunlight spilled weakly through the blinds of Mia's small apartment in Queens. The sound of traffic and a distant siren blended with the rattle of the subway beneath her floor. She sat at the edge of her narrow bed, her apron draped over her knees, staring at the clock that blinked 7:12 a.m. Her double shift started in less than an hour. Her phone buzzed a message from the bar manager. "About last night," the VIP guest complained. "Be more careful next time." Mia's stomach twisted. "Of course," he complained. A millionaire had insulted her, and now she was the one being scolded. She tied her hair into a ponytail, slipped into her worn sneakers, and grabbed her sketchbook. It was the only thing she owned that made her feel like herself. Every page was filled with New York's small moments, steam rising from coffee cups, puddles reflecting neon lights, the tired faces on late-night trains. She whispered, "One day, I will paint full-time. No uniforms, no shifts." The diner below her apartment was already open. She ordered a single black coffee and sat by the window, sketching the old man feeding pigeons outside. The world around her was loud and restless, but her pencil moved softly, like a secret rhythm that kept her alive. Across the city, Ethan Hale was seated in his glass office on the 48th floor of Hale Investments. The skyline stretched endlessly beyond the window, but his attention was elsewhere. His assistant stood by the door, reading the day's schedule board meeting at 9, lunch with partners at noon, charity event review at 3. He nodded absently. When she left, he leaned back in his chair and stared at the unopened bottle of whiskey on his desk, the same brand from the bar. The scene from last night replayed in his mind. Her startled eyes, the way her voice shook, the sound of her footsteps fading. He had meant to apologize but had told himself it was pointless. Yet the guilt remained. He opened his laptop to review the upcoming charity list and paused when he saw a digital flyer. Community Art Caf. Fundraiser for local artists. The thumbnail image caught him off guard, a pencil sketch of a rainy street corner, drawn on the corner of a receipt. It was her drawing. He recognized the jagged lines, the same he had seen on that piece of paper she had left behind. Without thinking, he saved the address. That evening, after work, Mia volunteered at that same small cafe in Soho. It was cozy, filled with second-hand furniture and the smell of cinnamon coffee. She hung one of her sketches near the counter, more as decoration than display. A few customers glanced at it but quickly turned back to their phones. When the bell above the door chimed, she barely looked up. Then a quiet, familiar voice said, "Nice drawing." Her heart skipped. She turned, and there he was, the man from the rooftop bar, now dressed in a tailored navy coat, not a trace of the careless arrogance from that night. Mia's first instinct was to walk away, but his tone stopped her. It was softer, uncertain. "I owe you an apology," Ethan said. "I was out of line." She folded her arms. "Out of line? You humiliated me." He nodded once. "You are right. I have no excuse." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the low hum of the espresso machine. He glanced at the framed sketch again. "You drew this?" "Yes," she said flatly. "I draw when I have nothing left to lose." "It is beautiful," he said quietly. "And I mean that in the right way this time." Her jaw tightened. "I am not sure there is a right way for you to mean anything, Mr. Hale." He hesitated, as if weighing whether to reveal who he really was. "Instead," he said, "I come here often. Maybe next time, I will earn the right to call you by your name." Mia said nothing. She turned away, wiping a table that was already clean, her heart pounding with a mix of anger and something she refused to name. As he left, Ethan glanced back once more. Through the window, the reflection of city lights fell across her face. There was something in her, a quiet strength, an honesty that felt like gravity. He did not know why, but for the first time in years, Ethan Hale wanted to be someone better than the man he had been the night before. Days passed, and the winter wind grew sharper across New York. The small cafe in Soho became a quiet refuge for people escaping the cold. And somehow, Ethan Hale became one of them. He would stop by after work, always at the same corner table, ordering nothing more than black coffee. He never asked for special treatment, never mentioned his wealth, and never corrected anyone who called him Sir instead of Mr. Hale. Mia tried to ignore him. She told herself he was only there out of guilt, that men like him did not change. Yet every time she glanced up, she found him reading the newspaper or writing in a small leather notebook, occasionally watching her sketch. There was no arrogance in his expression now, only quiet interest. One night, the cafe's owner, Mrs. Ruth, pulled Mia aside. "That gentleman in the corner," she whispered, "has been coming here for 2 weeks. Maybe he likes you." Mia gave a dry laugh. "More likely, he is here for the free Wi-Fi." But when she looked back, Ethan raised his cup slightly in greeting, and she felt her cheeks warm. Later that week, a snowstorm hit the city. Power flickered, and half the cafe's customers left early. As Mia cleaned tables by candlelight, Ethan offered to help. You should go home before the trains stop, he said. She shook her head. Home is colder than here. Yada. He studied her for a moment, then took off his coat and draped it over the back of a chair. Then I will wait until you lock up. They worked in silence, the only sound the wind pushing against the windows. When she finally turned off the lights, they stood at the door together. He smiled faintly. I owe you another apology for showing up uninvited in your life. Mia crossed her arms. Apologies do not erase what you said. I know, he replied, but maybe actions can. He held out a folded piece of paper. It was an invitation to a small local art showcase. They are looking for independent artists. I told them about your sketches. Mia stared at him. You told them? You had no right. He hesitated. Maybe not, but you have talent that deserves to be seen. She looked down at the paper, torn between pride and disbelief. You think this makes up for calling me what you did? No, he said softly. Nothing could, but it could be a beginning. Too poor. For the first time, she saw something behind his polished, calm, genuine remorse. She wanted to stay angry, but her voice softened. You should not try to fix people to clean your conscience, Mr. Hale. I am not fixing you, Mia, he said. You are the one fixing me. Her breath caught, and she looked away quickly. Good night, Mr. Hale. He smiled faintly. Good night, Miss Collins. When he stepped outside, snow was falling heavier, covering the city in white silence. Mia watched from the window as he disappeared into the blur of lights, leaving only his coat behind. She touched the fabric. It was warm, expensive, far too much for someone like her. That night, as she walked home through the snow, the invitation crumpled in her pocket. She found herself smiling despite everything. Maybe kindness could come from strange places. Maybe mistakes could lead somewhere unexpected. And in a skyscraper across town, Ethan Hale sat at his desk, staring at the empty chair where she had stood hours earlier. For the first time in years, the city outside felt alive again. He did not know it yet, but this quiet waitress from Queens had already started changing the way he saw the world. A week later, the snow had turned into a thin layer of gray slush, and the city was slowly thawing. Mia woke up before dawn, her small heater humming weakly against the cold. She placed her mother's medicine on the table and counted the few dollars she had left. Rent was due in 3 days. The art showcase invitation sat near the window, edges curled from the damp air. She had not decided whether to go. At the café, Mrs. Ruth handed her a small envelope. A gentleman left this for you last night, she said with a knowing smile. Inside was a note written in neat handwriting. For materials, no return needed. EH. 0. There was a check enclosed enough to cover new art supplies, maybe even the rent. Mia's chest tightened. She turned the paper over, then folded it back carefully. She would not cash it. That evening, Ethan arrived again, brushing snow from his coat. Mia placed his usual coffee on the table without a word. You are persistent, she said quietly. He smiled. I have been told that is one of my better flaws. Her tone softened. Why do you keep coming here, Ethan? There are hundreds of cafes in New York. Because this one feels honest, he said simply. Their conversations began to stretch longer each night. They spoke of books, of how New York looked softer in the rain, of how people sometimes hide behind ambition because they are afraid to be ordinary. Mia told him about her dream cafe, the one filled with art from people who never had a chance. Ethan listened like a man who had never really listened before. One night, as they closed up, the streetlights flickered through the window. Mia leaned on the counter, tired but smiling. You do not seem like the kind of man who spends his nights talking about dreams. Maybe I was not, he said, until I met someone who reminded me they still matter. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed an overdue notice from the hospital. The numbers blurred together. She swallowed hard and tried to hide the screen, but he noticed. Is everything all right? Everything is fine, she said quickly, forcing a smile. Just life reminding me that dreams cost money. The next morning, Mia went to the hospital to speak with the billing office. As she walked out, she noticed a black luxury car parked by the curb. The driver opened the door, and Ethan stepped out, holding a bouquet of lilies. Your mother likes these, does she not? He said gently. Mia blinked, startled. How do you know that? You mentioned it once. My Luda. Her throat tightened. You should not be here. I only wanted to help. "This is not your world to fix," she said sharply. "You cannot buy forgiveness, Ethan." He flinched but nodded. "You are right. I just wanted to see you smile again." She sighed, turning away. "Then stop reminding me of what I cannot afford." That night, she returned home and found another envelope slipped under her door. No money this time, only a simple note. "You once said you wanted people to rest from the noise. I want to help you build that place. On your terms." Mia stared at it for a long time. Part of her wanted to tear it up, to reject everything that came from him. But another part, the tired, hopeful part, held on to the idea that maybe his intentions were real. Across the city, Ethan looked out from his penthouse window at the glowing lights below. For years, he had bought everything he wanted. But now, the one thing he wanted most, her trust, was something his money could never buy. 2 weeks passed. The snow melted from the rooftops, and spring light began to filter through the city. The small café in Soho looked brighter now, filled with laughter, the smell of cinnamon, and sketches pinned along the walls. Mia had finally agreed to display her drawings for the community showcase. The night before the event, she worked late, tracing the final lines of a new piece as a rainy New York street, with 2 figures passing each other beneath a single umbrella. Her hands trembled slightly as she signed her name at the bottom. It was the first time she had ever signed a drawing. Ethan stopped by just before closing. "So tomorrow is the big day," he said, setting a small paper bag on the counter. Inside was a box of new pencils and brushes. She looked at them, half smiling. "You really do not give up, do you?" He shrugged. "I am stubborn when something matters." "And this matters to you?" she asked. "It does," he said softly. "You do." Her breath caught for a moment. She looked away, pretending to wipe the counter. "I do not need anyone to rescue me, Ethan." "I know," he replied. "Maybe I just want to walk beside you." The next evening, the café was packed for the showcase. Local musicians played softly in the corner, and the walls glowed under strings of warm lights. Mia's sketches hung among the others, each one marked with a small handwritten tag. People admired her work, and for the first time, she did not hide in the kitchen. Ethan arrived quietly, blending into the crowd. When he approached her, she could tell he was nervous. "You did this," he said. "Look around, Mia. This is yours." She smiled faintly. "No, this is ours. You believed I could do it when I did not." But the moment was interrupted when a man in a gray suit approached, speaking loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Mr. Hale, we did not expect to see you here. Your foundation's donation made this event possible." The words hit Mia like cold water. She turned to Ethan, confusion filling her eyes. "What donation?" Ethan hesitated. "Mia, listen, this was never about credit. I only wanted—" She stepped back, her voice rising. "You funded this? You made me part of your charity project?" People around them turned to watch. Ethan reached for her arm, but she pulled away. "I trusted you," she said. "And you still think money solves everything?" The silence in the café was sharp and heavy. Ethan looked at her, helpless. "Mia, please." "Do not follow me," she said. Her voice broke, and she walked out into the night, the cold air cutting her cheeks. Outside, the city was alive with noise, but inside her, everything went quiet. She could still hear his words, could still see the disappointment in his face, but pride pushed her forward. She told herself it was better this way. He belonged to the world of headlines and charity boards, and she belonged to late shifts and unpaid rent. Back inside the café, Ethan stood alone, the lights dimming around him. Mrs. Ruth walked up and shook her head gently. Sometimes good intentions look like betrayal to someone who has only ever been hurt. He nodded slowly, the truth settling in his chest like a weight he could not lift. For the first time, Ethan Hale had everything money could buy, and still, he had never felt poorer. Days passed without a word between them. Mia threw herself into work, pretending not to notice the quiet ache that lingered beneath every cup she served. The café no longer felt warm. The laughter around her sounded distant. Every time someone mentioned the art showcase, she changed the subject. At night, she sat by her window sketching until her fingers cramped. The city lights shimmered across the page, but her drawings lacked the spark they once had. Her mother, resting on the couch, noticed the emptiness in her eyes. "You can forgive people and still protect yourself, Mia," she said gently. But do not let anger turn into your only home. Mia smiled faintly but said nothing. Across town, Ethan Hale had withdrawn from the world that had always demanded his presence. Meetings came and went without him truly listening. His assistant reminded him about a major merger, but he waved it off. His mind kept returning to her face that night at the café, the way her voice cracked when she said she trusted him. He had tried calling, but she never answered. Letters went unread. He realized that every good thing he had done, every attempt to help, had been built on the same flaw that drove his wealth: control. He had tried to buy peace, not earn it. One late afternoon, he visited the cafe again. The bell above the door chimed softly, but Mia was not there. Mrs. Ruth wiped her hands on her apron and sighed. She quit last week, she said. Said she needed space to find herself again. Ethan's heart sank. Do you know where she went? Mrs. Ruth studied him for a long moment, then nodded toward the framed drawing still hanging on the wall. Wherever this was drawn, she said that place makes her feel seen. The drawing showed a quiet corner of Central Park, a small bridge over the frozen lake. That evening, as snow began to fall again, Ethan found himself standing on that bridge, the city lights glowing behind him. He almost turned back, but then he saw her. Mia sat on a nearby bench, sketchbook in hand, wrapped in an old coat and scarf. She looked up, startled, as he approached. You should not be here, she said softly. I had to see you, he replied, to say the words I should have said before. She closed her sketchbook. You already said enough. No, he said, stepping closer. I said everything wrong. I thought helping meant giving. But what you needed was someone to believe, not to control. I did not see that until I lost you. Taunty. Her eyes softened, but her guard stayed up. Ethan, you cannot undo what happened. I know, he said. But maybe I can start again without pretending to fix anything. The snow thickened around them, muffling the noise of the city. For a moment, it felt as if time had stopped. Ethan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper, her original sketch from the bar, the one drawn on a receipt. The edges were creased, but the lines still shimmered under the streetlights. I kept this, he said. It reminded me that beauty can come from broken things. Mia stared at the drawing, her breath catching. After a long silence, she said, You should have thrown it away. I could not, he said, because I was the one who ruined the moment, and this was the only proof that something real existed between us. The snow settled on their shoulders, quiet and cold. She looked at him for a long time, then whispered, Ethan, I do not know if I can trust you again. TFDS. He nodded. Then let me earn it. Mia hesitated, her eyes glistening. Then she took the drawing from his hand, holding it carefully as if it were fragile. We will see, she said softly. And for the first time in weeks, Ethan smiled, not in triumph, but in hope. Over the following weeks, the snow melted into soft puddles that mirrored the early spring sky. Mia returned to the cafe for a few shifts each week, not because she needed the money, but because she missed the quiet rhythm of pouring coffee and hearing stories. Ethan did not come often, and when he did, he stayed at the far corner table, never asking for her attention. At first, she thought he was only pretending to change, but something about his silence felt real. He no longer sent gifts or notes. He ordered his coffee, left a small tip, and quietly supported the local artists who displayed their work there. He did not use his name anymore. The flyers simply read, Sponsored by a friend. One afternoon, Mia found an article in the local paper about a new project called the Gallery Cafe Initiative, a foundation that funded small community spaces for artists across the city. The photo showed Ethan shaking hands with Mrs. Ruth. Beneath it, the caption read, Anonymous donor helps revive independent art in New York. That night, Mia confronted him after closing time. You could not help yourself, could you? She said, holding up the newspaper. Ethan looked up from his seat, calm but tired. It was not about me, Mia. It was about what you inspired. She folded her arms. You are still using your money to make things right. No, he said quietly. I am using it to do something right. There is a difference. She wanted to argue, but his sincerity disarmed her. The man who once hid behind arrogance now looked humbled, his voice stripped of pride. You do not owe me anything, she said. I know, he replied, But I owe this city something better than the version of me it used to know. Silence hung between them, heavy but peaceful. The caf lights flickered off one by one, and she finally exhaled. You really did change, she said softly. Not because of guilt, he answered. Because you reminded me what it means to be human. For the first time, she smiled without hesitation. I suppose that is something. A few days later, Mrs. Ruth asked Mia to attend a charity dinner where local artists would be recognized. Mia reluctantly agreed, believing it was just another fundraiser. But when she arrived, her breath caught. The event was being held at the Hale Foundation Gala, the same kind of glamorous place she had once served as a waitress. The chandeliers glittered above marble floors, and she felt out of place all over again. As the ceremony began, the host's voice echoed through the hall. Tonight, we honor projects that bridge worlds, those who remind us that art belongs to everyone. Please welcome our guest of honor, the founder of the Gallery Caf Initiative, Mr. Ethan Hale. Mia froze. She stared at him on stage, her heart pounding. He was not hiding anymore. When he spotted her in the crowd, his voice wavered slightly. I built many things in my life, but none taught me more than one small cafe in Soho. There, I met someone who showed me that dignity cannot be purchased and kindness cannot be measured in dollars. Applause filled the hall, but Mia stood motionless, caught between disbelief and pride. Ethan's eyes searched the audience until they found hers. He did not smile. He only nodded, as if saying the words he could not speak aloud. When the event ended, she slipped away before anyone could stop her. Outside, cool air brushed against her skin. She had spent so long running from pain that she almost forgot what forgiveness could feel like. Then she heard his voice behind her. Mia, he said softly. I did not expect you to come. She turned. I did not expect to hear you say those things. He stepped closer. They were true. For the first time since that terrible night, Mia did not walk away. She looked at him, her voice trembling but calm. Maybe it is time we both stop pretending we are from different worlds. Ethan smiled faintly. Then let me meet you halfway. And as the city lights shimmered behind them, the distance that had once defined them finally began to fade. The morning after the gala felt strange, quiet, and heavy. Mia sat by her apartment window, watching sunlight creep through the city haze. The night replayed in her mind the way Ethan looked at her from the stage, the words he had said to an entire ballroom. He had not tried to defend himself. He had simply told the truth. For the first time, she wondered if she had judged him too harshly. But then she remembered the humiliation of that night at the cafe, the way everyone had turned to stare when she found out who he really was. Pride still stung deeper than forgiveness could reach. Later that day, Mrs. Ruth stopped by the caf with a small envelope. He asked me to give you this, she said gently. Inside was a single invitation card. It read, The Art of Mia Collins, Community Showcase. Beneath the title was a small line that made her breath catch. Curated by the Gallery Caf Initiative. Mia almost threw it away, but something about the way her name looked in print made her pause. She had spent her life serving others, hiding behind the counter, sketching on napkins. Maybe she owed it to herself, not to him, to see what her art had become. When she arrived at the small downtown venue, her heart pounded. The gallery glowed with warm lights, soft music echoing through the space. Paintings filled the walls, her paintings, sketches of city streets, quiet faces, and a single drawing of the cafe where it all began. People stood admiring them, whispering about the emotion and honesty in every stroke. At the far end of the room, Ethan stood near the window, dressed simply, no entourage, no photographers. He turned as she entered, but did not approach. Instead, he gave her a respectful nod, as if to say, This is your moment, not mine. Mrs. Ruth walked up beside her, smiling. He refused to let them put his name anywhere, said this night was yours. Mia swallowed hard, her throat tight. Slowly, she walked toward the largest piece hanging at the center, a charcoal sketch of 2 coffee cups, side by side, half finished. Beneath it, a small plaque read, The best mistakes lead us home. Her eyes filled with tears. She turned to find Ethan still watching her, his expression gentle but uncertain. After a moment, she stepped closer. You did all this? She asked softly. He shook his head. You did. I just made sure the world could see it. Just a row. Silence stretched between them, fragile but full of something new understanding. Mia looked around the room again, then back at him. You could have told me who you were that first night. I wanted to, he admitted. But for the first time, someone spoke to me like a person, not a name. I did not want to lose that. Mia let out a long breath, the anger that had once burned inside her slowly fading. You still hurt me, she said quietly. I know, he replied, and I will carry that until you decide I have made it right. She studied him, the way he stood, not as a man used to winning, but as someone willing to wait. For once, his wealth did not show. Only humility did. Finally, she smiled faintly. You already made something right, she said, gesturing around. You gave me my voice back. He smiled too, relief flickering in his eyes. Then maybe it is time for both of us to start again. No lies, no titles. She nodded slowly. Just Mia and Ethan. Shiudak. And as the lights dimmed and the crowd began to applaud, they stood side by side. Two people who had learned that sometimes love is not about perfect timing or perfect truth. It is about the courage to begin again after everything has gone wrong. A few months later, the city glowed with the first warmth of summer. Morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the gallery café, lighting up walls filled with sketches and laughter. The café had become everything Mia once dreamed, of a place where people could rest from the noise, surrounded by art that spoke to ordinary lives. She stood behind the counter, wiping down cups while music hummed softly from the speakers. Across the room, Ethan helped a young artist hang her first painting, stepping back with a smile of quiet pride. The man who once hid behind power now looked completely at ease in the simple rhythm of this place. When he walked over, he handed her a cup of coffee. You forgot your morning dose of caffeine again, he teased. Mia smiled. Some habits are hard to break. He looked around the cafe, his tone gentle. You did it, Mia. You turned a misunderstanding into something beautiful. She shook her head. No, we did it. You just finally learned how to listen. They shared a laugh, warm and easy. For a moment, the noise of the world faded. Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out a small framed picture, the sketch she had drawn on that receipt long ago. This started everything, he said. One night, one mistake, and somehow it led us here. Mia traced the edge of the frame, her voice soft. The worst night of my life, she said. And somehow, the best thing that ever happened to me. He took her hand, steady and sure. Maybe that is what love really is, a series of mistakes that finally make sense. Bino tum. Mia looked into his eyes, smiling. If that is true, then we must be perfect. Outside, the city kept moving, cars, footsteps, and laughter blending into the rhythm of life. Inside the cafe, the two of them stood quietly, surrounded by everything they had built together. And for the first time, it did not matter who had more or less, who had fallen or risen. They had both learned that real love was not about wealth or status. It was about seeing someone completely and choosing to stay.